Hello and welcome to this episode of the Star Wars Universe podcast. Friends, for the first time we have new content to record on in quite a while because we have just watched The Mandalorian Season 2, Episode 1, The Marshal. And I'm here with Jeff Randle, Ashley Coffin, and Paul Hoppe to talk about this new episode. All the things we loved, all the things that might have raised an eyebrow or two, and what we think this sets up for the season to come. All that and more after this commercial break, over which we have absolutely zero, not at all, 100% no control. Welcome back. As I said, my name is Matthew, and I'm joined by three wonderful guests, which will make this so much fun to edit, because we are all soft-spoken people who I'm sure will never interrupt each other. So let's go around the horn. Jeff, first of all, how are you doing? How you feeling about being back to Mandalorian?
Where are the wonderful guests? You promised me 3.
You, sir, are a wonderful guest, even though you'll try to fight it.
Okay, that's fair. Man, I'm so glad to be back to The Mandalorian. Like, we did Mando recap kind of a month after the fact or so, and it kind of felt like we took forever to get through it the first time, and I was just like, come on, let's watch the next one. Come on, let's watch the next one. So like when this one came out and we're leading up to it, we're getting the big hype, we're getting the hype rolling. I'm moving. Like I moved from Tampa, Florida to Birmingham, Alabama the weekend before the Mando came out, and I was like, I've got to be set up before that happens, because I refuse to miss it, first off.
Oh, for sure.
But I also refuse to miss talking about it, because I know it's going to be amazing. But like, because I was packing up all of my electronics and stuff, I kind of stayed away, or I was kind of forced to stay away from any sort of spoilers or anything. So all of this episode was just brand new, wide open for me. And I was so pleased. Oh my goodness gracious.
We did an episode 1 recap, and you were very much missed on that. But I totally get why. And I hadn't seen any trailers either, so I was super psyched for this. Ashley, what about yourself? How are you doing tonight, and how are you feeling about jumping back into Mandoland?
Really good, Matthew. This was awesome. It was so jam-packed and quick that it almost didn't feel like it was as long as it was.
Yeah. Yeah, it kind of flew by, and I knew we were going into this, we were going to get a 50-minute episode, so I was expecting it to be long, and it just went by in a wink. Mm-hmm. And then our third guest, Paul. Paul, how are we doing tonight?
Pretty good, as well as one can be these days.
Thanks for saying it.
Yeah, I mean, it's just how it is, right?
Escapism uber alles. That's what we're going for tonight.
Exactly. I enjoyed Chapter 9, Tremors, for the most part. Spoilers ahead.
Into the wrong goddamn rec room, didn't you? You son of a bitch.
Chapter 9, Deadwood turns into Tremors. I mean, there were some spots, but it was nice to actually see kind of where the show was actually heading after season 1, and I feel like there's a certain level of confidence actually in the storytelling that's kind of it's kind of grown a little bit.
Yeah, how so? What I think I have an idea of what you're talking about, but say more about what you mean.
I don't know, like just the first time that we see Mando walking. I mean, I think the first shot was him and the child just pushing the basically he's out with his stroller going to an underground fight club type place, to or a gladiatorial kind of thing. And just kind of the way, I mean, he's always carried himself a certain way, but he's got his shiny armor, his jetpack, there's just, I don't know, there was a little bit of a different feel to the storytelling, which I was talking to someone earlier who was saying, season 2 is usually kind of downhill. And I'm like, well, actually, I think season 2 is often one of the best seasons for a lot of shows, because season 1, I think there's often a certain level of awkwardness. And I'd say Mandalorian actually didn't have that much of that. But, you get to have characters that you've seen before, right? You get to meet them again. You're like, oh, we're back on Tatooine now. And there's just a different feel to that in a show that I enjoy before they get to season 8, 9, 10. And you're like, why are we still doing this? Although this is a show I feel could go 10 seasons if they actually went kind of wide enough with it. because the universe is so big, right? And this felt like the first time we were on a planet that felt like it was a planet with multiple places.
Yeah.
You know?
Wait, you mean every planet is not the one city that they go to on it?
I mean, that's what I've heard, but it's all rumors.
Yeah, when they mentioned another, I think it was Mos Espas or Mos Espa, a third city on Tatooine.
Right.
I was like, what? Are you kidding me?
There's 3 cities?
Please, the first line of my notes is, wow, we're going back to Tatooine. Like, 'cause we had a long discussion about this in our recap about the places that we keep going to. And I was like, look at where we're going. Wow.
Well, and it's funny because in that recap discussion, I had said that even though it was very brief, one of the things I liked most was that we got to learn a little bit more about the Sand People, or the Tuskens, we should call them, and that the story was very much reminiscent of a kind of modern cowboy story where it's about kind of, getting past the prejudice against the indigenous natives and realizing that they have a lot of wisdom and a lot more perspective to share and can be your aides, and be your helpers. And so to actually get that story and go that deep on it, I just absolutely loved, because I loved that it was, but it also didn't just become like constant fighting and bickering and look at the prejudice. It was just, okay, there's some prejudice and we have to get past this, and then we're past it and we're all going to work together. And I really loved that about this story.
Me too.
Yeah, this is kind of the tropey old Western, like we all have to band together to kill the man-eater.
Right.
Kind of story. And I love that it can be reduced down to that. Like every Mando story so far in this series is like easily boiled down to a Western trope. Yeah. But the old Western stories, the old Western tropes, whatever, like you can call it a trope, but it feels like this particular series puts such a unique spin on it and shines a different kind of light on it. And it's like they tell that old story in the new way, and they've just continued doing that in this season 2. And I'm so impressed that like they keep that old stuff fresh somehow. All right, cool.
God.
Great episode, guys. We're done.
All done.
It's particularly interesting to me because, funnily enough, Paul and I just did an entire episode on tropes for the Superhero Ethics podcast that came out literally yesterday. And it's funny because we talked about generally why we don't like tropes, but that what can make them interesting is when there's all these like new interesting twists on them.
Yeah.
And I agree with you. That's exactly what this does. It takes them, but it puts some new spin on them, new direction on them. And even the other thing that I was really impressed by, and Paul, I'm not sure if this is what you meant about the confidence, but I think it ties in. One of the things that I often don't like about a second season is that, on a show like this one where there is an Uber story, but it's mostly very episodic, by the second season, there's now this feeling of, wait, no, now we've got to get more into the main story. And so the episodicness really starts to fade, and it becomes just about, moving the main plot along.
Yeah.
This was incredibly episodic. Like, I think it kind of put some of the pieces on the board, such as like the armor that we think is probably from Boba Fett, maybe one or two other like leads to track down. But there was no mention at all of, Moff Gideon or like the hunt for the child or, what the Imperials want or any of that stuff. And I really loved that.
Yes.
It reminded me a lot of like Bird Notice, actually, the way just specifically it treated its kind of overarching plot where, here you've got, it is very episodic, right? But they come into it from okay, this is the overarching thing. He's trying to find a home for the child, right?
Right.
And he gets a lead and goes somewhere, and it looks like it's going to be one trope, like shootout at the OK Corral kind of thing, right? And then it takes a right turn, and it's a totally different, it's a trope or it's a a type of story, but there's like kind of sort of multiple head fakes. It's like, oh, he's going to find a Mandalorian. Oh, it's not a Mandalorian. Oh, they're going to fight. Oh, they're not going to fight.
Oh, they're best friends now.
Oh, they're getting attacked by these creatures. Oh, these creatures are actually, friendly creatures that the Tuskens are down with.
Oh yeah, the shark doggos.
Yeah, the shark dogs.
I love that he could speak. Did he do that in the first season, the Tusken speaking?
I think he used like more sign language, kind of.
Okay. Yeah. He was real deep into it this time.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, the first time it was just the sign language, and the rookie was just like, "What are you doing?" He's like,
"Right."
Giving him your monocular.
Yeah. Keeping us alive so we can respect them and cross their territory.
Well, I have another problem with the Tuskens. So they're like, we have to take down these monsters. We have these 10-foot muskets or crossbows. I mean, don't look at over that C4 and other badass weapons over there. We're going to use our muskets and crossbows? Like, what?
Are you talking about the bantha ballista?
I don't want to talk about the bantha ballista, but it's very upsetting. Do you know how much like that thing had to go through? Because then he electrocuted it. It probably wasn't dead when it was still in there.
Oh, the bantha that was on the inside.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean,
that was rough.
I've got some things to say.
Sorry, I'm jumping all over
about
the
the treatment of bantha.
So it's like
What's the plural of bantha? Is it banthas or just bantha?
I think
anyway,
we could probably
I
make
think
it up.
banthas for the sake of sanity.
Okay, we'll go with banthas. Should I say what I have to say?
Yeah.
Basically, the treatment of banthas is horrible.
It was messed up.
But in this way that I think actually somewhat mirrors some real life treatment of animals, where you see the Tusken Raider like with this giant toothbrush brushing a bantha's teeth, which I thought was awesome. I thought that was great, but then they're like, okay, now we're gonna feed you to the dragon. But then they got eaten
dirty
instead.
Bantha teeth.
Right, exactly. You got to clean up the bantha before.
You can't have bad breath. The dragon won't come after it.
And they made it have the peace of mind to want to run away. He's like, no, no, stay.
It's kind of sad though, because then that bantha survived, right? Because the dragon was like, oh no, I want to eat this other meal. I already had bantha for breakfast or yesterday, but then they
can't have bantha twice in one day.
Right. It's just too much.
Was it the same one?
It's unclear. So I'll pretend it's not. Yeah. I mean, I feel like if you survive Dragon one time, like, you should get a pass for the rest of your life.
But did they only put the bombs on one of them? Oh. Okay, I don't want to think about it.
Yeah. I mean, I'll just say, I think it's, and Paul, you've brought this up a lot, but it's something I've really come to think about as well. One of my only real complaints about the Star Wars universe is that they tell us when to care about a particular form of life and when not to.
Yeah.
And there's no consistency to that. And
that's true.
I think especially we see this in terms of droids, where there are some droids who get to tell funny jokes, and so we care about them, and some droids who are, battle droids, and just we can slaughter them by the thousands.
Right.
Roger.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And granted, if you said Roger, Roger to me that many times, I would shoot you as well. But
I've almost never heard that. Anyway.
Yeah, what do they say in Spanish?
Entendido. They're like, I understand.
And is it significantly less annoying because of that?
Oh, way less annoying. I had no idea. Like, it's almost kind of cute. I don't know. It's fine. But then, like, you listen to it in English, you're like, oh my goodness. I think they say Roger in German, too, and it's awful. So
that makes sense. But yeah, so anyway, and it felt like that they show the Tuskens really caring for animals, both the way they take care of the banthas, but also I think the fact that the Mandalorian connects with, the really sharp-toothed dog, is part of why they're like, okay, the Mandalorian's a good guy, because he gets animals. And I kind of get that maybe what they're trying to show is that these folks have a very different understanding of animal life, and that they do have a real respect for it, but also willing to sacrifice it when needed. But it just after the first time you showed it, I wish there had been some other way to get the dragon to eat all the explosive. You need to show us two different banthas in life-threatening circumstances.
Right, exactly.
And the one at the top, it ate the one right off the bat. In the
the one that was by the fountain.
Just minding its own business.
Yeah, just chilling.
I thought it was kind of funny that when the krayt dragon first showed up, we as viewers had no idea what was going on. Everybody else is running away, and the Marshal Timothy Oliphant is just standing on the side watching, just yep, there it goes again.
Yep.
It's another day of this happening. Oh, he's going for the bantha. Okay, cool, great.
And I will say, I don't know if these things came from this book, but on our last episode I talked about the novel Kenobi, which is I think at this point my favorite Star Wars novel. Which, given the quality of some of them, is not an incredibly hard bar to top, but some of them are fairly good. Actually, some of them are very good. But one of the things that story does is that one also goes deep into the like traditions, understandings, and cultural mores of the banthas. Of the Tuskens.
Mm-hmm.
And it talks about how the one thing that they're afraid of is the krayt dragon.
Right.
And I don't. It may well have been mentioned in something else, and so both the book and the show are taking from that. But it was kind of cool to me to hear that referenced again, and it feels like either they're acknowledging the Kenobi novel in some way, or that the Kenobi comes from a shared source. But it was cool to kind of have the Tusken people developed more in a way that fits the existing canon.
Continuity.
Yeah, at first I thought it was going to be like a Sarlacc or something, because it's hard to really know exactly what that is or was, because we really only kind of see some tentacles.
Yeah,
but
don't
then
they like not move?
I guess. I don't know. I mean, we see it kind of in Return of the Jedi, right? But I don't think we see like really like the whole creature. But apparently the krayt dragon ate the Sarlacc, so everything's eating each other. I guess that's just nature. I mean, I had some feelings for the krayt dragon. You know, I'm like, whatever. It's just trying to get a snack. You know, like. I mean, honestly, like my sort of emotional investment in the outcome was like not super high, you know. I mean, if it was maybe going to eat like the child, like I might have felt differently. But I was like, yeah, all these people, these don't seem like wonderful people. So, you know.
He lost me at acid
they look
puking.
more like food.
Once he started acid puking, I was like, kill that monster.
Maybe it's just indigestion.
He's quick too. You got to kill the quick puking monsters.
You know. Heartburn's a bitch, man. What are you going to do?
He's like, let me go up top of my mountain where I have perfect puking, you know. What's the word?
Range.
Yeah.
Line of sight, as I think we
covered. Perfect puking line of sight.
It's an AoE attack with very good line of sight.
Nah, man, the krayt dragon is obviously a black dragon. They belch acid.
Oh, yes.
Fair.
One thing to sort of contrast with the what I would consider fairly poor treatment of animals was the droids, and something that we had mentioned about in our season 1 recap was kind of like, is Mando going to have kind of grown from interacting with the assassin turned nurse droid, right? And the answer is, I think, pretty clearly yes, right? That when they go back to, when he goes to the hangar there, the repair shop or whatever it is, she's like, oh, droids, stay away from me. He's like, oh, that's fine, And in season 1, he was like, no, get away from my ship. Like,
yeah, keep those bastards away from my ship.
Yeah, I love that. I thought of you guys. I was like, oh, yay, right away. He's a better person.
Yeah, right out of the gate.
Yeah, I would have appreciated it a little bit more if she had not been like so vocal and pointing it out. If it were a little bit more subtle.
Oh, sure,
sure. Yeah, sure. Let him do the thing. And she was like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah.
And like, if that was it, then it would have been a little bit better. But it was a bit heavy-handed this time
Once
around.
She was commenting on it.
Yeah, where she was just like pointing it straight out, just like, oh my god, are you sure? Because you hate droids, remember? Remember that one time that you showed up here and you like shot one of them? Yeah, you hate droids. You're not supposed to be like this.
I'm mixed on it though, because I agree with you. Like, I think the perfect way to do it would be just the droids go over, he kind of reflexively looks up and starts to object, and then is like, never mind. But also part of what we've established about her character is that she just says every thought that ever comes into her head.
That's true.
So it's kind of like, it's a little bit on the nose, but it's also very fitting for who she is.
Right.
Like, you can sell them to me. Yeah. I mean, not really, but yeah, really. Just kidding, not kidding.
Just kidding, not kidding. How much do you want for it? Give me this. I need this baby.
I mean, I think her being like telling them not to go over, I think made perfect sense once she saw him. I think I kind of hear, Jeff, what you're saying. If it's more about after that when he was like, no, it's cool, instead of her kind of being like, oh, okay, being like, oh, you have grown as a character.
Yeah, it's like she comes in saying like, the writers obviously did something for your character arc.
Right.
You have grown since you've been here.
But she does pretty much say her thoughts, doesn't she?
Yeah.
No, which is good.
So obviously what happens on Tatooine is kind of the main part of the story, but what'd you guys think of the first scene we had where we went into, as Paul said it,
John Leguizamo?
Pigman Fight Club.
Man, John Leguizamo.
I don't think that's exactly how. Oh yeah, that was really surprising that was him.
Oh really? I didn't even make that connection.
Yeah, that was John Leguizamo.
He was the Cyclops.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. I was just enjoying all the violence. That sweet PG-13 violence.
Yeah. So what was the deal there? Was that the idea that they each had like little personal shield generators, and so that was why like you kept getting the blue flash, but that you could eventually knock your way through the shields and kill the person? Is that how that gladiator fight worked?
How else do you indicate health bars?
Yeah, I guess that's a good way to do it.
I found it kind of confusing too. I was like, is somebody about to get a limb chopped off here? What's going on? Isn't this Star Wars? Like, why does everybody have two hands still?
Like, I keep forgetting
I don't understand.
But it
cut his left hand off.
It did, I think, though, also nicely help to set the tone of this is more of the, post-imperial, not really a republic, kind of like barbarian lands where, like we've devolved into gladiator fights again.
Right. Although just imperial and gladiator fights are not mutually exclusive. I mean, if we just think about the Colosseum in Rome, and
also true.
I agree with what you're saying, but and then in terms of tropes, like they then go for the like. Bad guy kills one of the other bad guys or whatever, like one of his people to like demonstrate how badass he is.
Which is literally one of the traits Paul mentioned as hating. In
that's like near my number one, yeah.
It's pointless.
Yeah. The way they did it though was not as it worked better than it usually does.
Right.
It didn't bother me really in that case. I was like, oh, there's that thing. But like it kind of made sense within the context. And then everybody scatters, and it was actually because it was less about him showing how badass he was, which is usually like the entirety of it. And it was like basically like, okay, now give me your armor, Like,
it seemed to be like the inciting incident for the ambush on the Mando rather than just being like a display of badassery.
Yeah.
Or even like they avoided the whole like, oh, it's fine, I fixed this fight because he was supposed to go down in the fourth and I won all this money. Mm-hmm. Like he just straight up was like, oh, this isn't going the way I want it. Bang.
Right.
Yeah. And I think to also establish that he like no one else was going to come out and be like, sir, you broke the rules. Like he sets the rules. This is his place.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which I think gave him some nice power.
This was his place.
Yeah. Now, some other creatures that we didn't see, their interiors are his place.
Oh, man.
And so what did we all think about Mando's treatment of him, which was basically the Batman equivalent of, I'm not going to kill you, but I don't have to save you, whereas this is going one further of, you won't die by my hand, but my hand will do the thing that will lead directly to your death.
Oh, I totally support it.
Totally fine with it too.
Totally
fine with it.
I mean,
when he threw the line up over the light, I was like, "Oh shit, we're going full Batman! Here we go!" I figured he was gonna at some point be like, "Swear to me,
just don't hook you, bitch."
I mean, I thought it was going to be I'm going to leave you hanging in this incredibly brutal part of town, and who knows if anyone will find you or if they'll come and mug you and kill you. I hadn't realized it was quite. I'm going to leave you here because these hungry monsters are going to eat you the moment I shut out this light.
I thought when he turned around, he was going to pop him in the head. I was like, he's just going to shoot him. But no.
Right. It wasn't my hand.
It was so much worse.
Kick his skull in or so. I mean, when he said that line, I'm like, oh, he's definitely going to kill this guy.
Mm-hmm.
Like, but not in like the most obvious way. Like, this guy isn't going to survive this encounter.
It was a real Tom Cruise and Collateral kind of thing. Like, I didn't kill him. I just shot him. The bullets in the fall killed him.
That's very true. That's super true.
But yeah, I mean, that person had just, like, killed one of their people and, like, whatever. Like, I don't know.
He was not one of nature's noblemen by any means.
Right.
And so, because there we were setting up some of the Uber plot. The idea was that he had information about who Yoda's people. I didn't quite understand. What was it that Mando wanted from him?
Right.
About the Mandalorian.
Yeah.
This guy apparently hunts and kills Mandalorians and takes their armor because Beskar is really expensive.
Right.
Or it goes for a lot when you hawk it. And so he knew where multiple Mandalorian people were, obviously because he hunts them. So he needs to get that information from the John Leguizamo character.
Okay, got it. So this wasn't about anything involving he wants to know where the child's people are, but there was nothing we saw that was about advancing that particular storyline.
No, this was a side mish.
No.
This was, he wanted to, the way that he was going to go about it is instead of like directly just looking for these Yoda style creatures, he's going through his people because his people have a history of conflict with, the wizards.
Yeah. That was the part
of wizards. So if he can find his people, if he can find the other Mandalorians, then he can start forming a trail of leads through the other coverts and track down where this kid's where he comes from.
Okay. That makes a lot more sense. Which and again, it's interesting that this whole thing is based on a misunderstanding that the Jedi are his race,
right?
Instead of which I assume we're gonna. I'm looking forward to Ahsoka being the walking exposition machine of just like no. Let me actually tell you how this all works, Mando.
Right. Ahsoka's going to show up and be like, oh shit, Yoda!
She's going to be like, stab him right under the occipital lobe. Oh wait, never mind.
Well, this is supposed to take place 5 years after Return of the Jedi.
Yes.
So
give or take, yeah, right.
I just still I guess we were saying last time because the universe was so big or whatever, but like really nobody knows what a Jedi is 5 years after Return of the Jedi?
So here's... I realize that you haven't played the game Mage the Ascension much.
All the
but
time.
Apparently what we're supposed to believe is that the Jedi have level 5 arcane.
Right.
So they're just telling everybody we didn't exist, like a whole world Jedi mind trick?
You didn't see me.
Yeah, because this is the second time this has happened.
Okay.
Yeah.
The last Jedi are killed, and they were all over the galaxy, and now 15 years later, no one's ever heard of them.
Your archaic religion.
Yeah, and
5. I think it's only 5.
We were saying this last time. If the Mandalorian is raised in the way of the Mandalorians, a huge part of the Mandalorians' whole culture and ideas has been the Jedi are our enemy. We found victory against the Jedi. We fight the Jedi. All this stuff. Mm-hmm. So the idea that the Mandalorian would be raised in the way without once hearing about this, I'm sure there's going to be some explanation they give us, and I hope it makes sense, or maybe we're going to laugh at it, but. Mm-hmm. I just want them to in some way address that, because you're right, Ashley. There's such a big logic gap there that makes no sense.
Okay. I'm going to take the opposite viewpoint, or hope, and I kind of almost hope they don't really address it too much, because given everything that we've seen in all the different, canon media, mm-hmm. It can't possibly make sense. So, just be yeah, I mean, maybe lampshade it in a humorous way or whatever, but just don't come up with midichlorians the second.
I agree with
don't
you
come
on
up
that.
with something that really, really is painful and doesn't make sense. It's just let it be the time is, we're traveling in space, there's relativity or something, years aren't really years. It's complicated.
I don't want the big midichlorian level explanation. I just mean the much smaller, how did the Mandalorians of this show become so different from the Mandalorians we've had in the canon?
Oh, okay.
And how did the knowledge of the Jedi fall out of that? Is it that there's now a great silence about the Jedi because of something that happened in the Purge or whatever it is?
Yeah.
And this episode kind of goes a little bit farther in kind of going against the everybody just collectively forgot, or nobody knows about it. They had a flashback where they literally watched the second Death Star explode on TV.
Yeah.
So information gets around places.
Right. Although does everybody know that was like all the Jedi stuff that was going on there. I mean, that was in private on the Death Star. Like Luke just took a little shuttle back to Endor and like, you know, burned his pops in the woods, and like nobody else saw the Force ghosts, right? Except like maybe Leia. You know, I mean,
I bet they'd ask questions about the lightsaber. Did he ever use it?
Who saw the lightsaber though?
Yeah, that's true.
Right, just like his pals and the Ewoks.
Didn't he use it when he saved
anybody.
everybody from the sand monster?
That happened.
Okay.
Well,
but again, who was all there?
And also, I mean, in the post-quels, which granted happened, you know, many years after this, but they've established that like the legend of Luke Skywalker is so much that Rey has heard of it, you know, and she's not exactly like plugged into the most mainstream news sources.
Right. But again, it's like a legend, and it's like 30-something years later.
Yeah.
Right.
As opposed to being like, oh yeah, that's like, you know,
that
the 60s.
Yesterday.
Yeah.
Right. Like even now it's like the 80s from our, I mean, literally, right? I mean, because the time difference is supposed to be the same.
Yeah.
Right. But like we've heard of the Beatles. I mean, like,
They were in the 70s.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, or like 80s bands, you know, even if you didn't grow up then, like, you know, it's a thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Luke
I
Skywalker's
heard of
like the
Twisted
Beatles of the galaxy.
I think he's more like the hair metal, is what Paul is saying.
Yeah. I think Kenobi's more of the Beatles.
Oh, okay.
I want to hold your hand.
Well done. Good accent.
That was strong. That was very strong.
So here's honestly my biggest complaint. Did anyone feel like we didn't get anywhere near enough of the child?
Oh,
like
yes.
We got
He
some
pushed
cute
the button
scenes.
and hid.
Dude, I only audibly said all I think 4 times, and I say it every time he's there.
And what was about the bantha? So
Yeah.
Well, I think it was mostly, I mean, like, we got some moments of him being cute, but they're, like, he didn't do anything that in any way affected the plot. There was no, like, moment of him interacting with Mando. He didn't use Force things in any way to affect, which I'm fine if he doesn't use the Force every episode. But I did think it was interesting that we had, like, no, like, consequence. He was just, like, you know, a cute thing that Mando was lugging around.
Yes. So I like that it wasn't about him in this episode. Like the whole first season was all about the child. It's, you know, they're chasing me because I took the child. They want the child. They want the child. They want to kill the child.
The child.
It's all about the child. But then now it's about, like, this episode was about Mando and Mandalorian armor and his people, and the child is just like a side piece.
Well, and there was one episode in season 1 that really wasn't about, I mean, the child wasn't really in it.
The Bill Burr.
Except for like a minute, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that the one entirely in space?
Where Bill Burr
the
pushes
first-
him down?
I mean, no, the first episode. I mean, there might be a second one, but so I kind of had a theory about this, and I think in the first episode of season 1, you know, the show's called The Mandalorian, right?
Right.
And I think they primarily established the character of the Mandalorian in episode 1 in season 1, and I feel like they probably deliberately wanted to kind of reestablish, you know, Mando as the center character. You know, it's like, it's not Mandalorian and the child. It's like, you know, the Mandalorian. And I think the rest of the season will be increasingly about the child and will have more impact on the plot and what happens, like, and actually taking action. But I felt like this was actually probably very deliberate to kind of focus on that one character above all, especially since you're introducing a second character who has a lot of agency in the plot. Deadwood, whatever his name is.
Cobb.
Yeah, no.
I think they said his name was
Cobb
Cobb
Vanth.
Vanth.
Yes. Yes.
Cobb
It was.
Vanth.
Yeah.
The Marshal.
The Marshal, yes. And I mean that was, you know, the title of the episode was like The Mandalorian, the Marshal. So like, you know, I think it very much focused on the two of them, and I think probably fairly deliberately kind of neglected the child to an extent. And I mean, you know, what is enough Baby Yoda? Like, that's not a thing, right?
Did you guys notice,
like still freaking adorable, even
so
with
cute.
like my notes actually say Baby Yoda still blank adorable, needs more screen time, but.
What, you didn't think it was enough where he was sitting in between Mando's feet getting eyed by the dog?
Right, yeah, that was hilarious. The best moment though was when, I mean, like they flipped up their own screen, right? Like closed the little egg crib thing. That wasn't what Mando did. Like when Mando's like, "Oh, it's about to get real in here."
He closed
and the
his
child's
own
like,
ball. Yeah, it was really funny.
He saw the whistling birds come out, and he was just like, oh,
exactly. It's like, uh-oh.
Like presses the button and dives in. Like, I'm out.
Yeah, that was kind of awesome. And yeah, I do think that theory makes sense. They're intentionally trying to not have the focus on him be 100%, which it's interesting because I think they know like Baby Yoda has like taken over the marketing 100%. But it's a great thing. I will also say. Jeff, like you, I didn't see any spoilers. I didn't see any trailers. The one thing I'd seen was the picture that I saw a lot. In part, it's one of the ones that I used in the publicity for this, and it showed I think 4 characters. It showed Baby Yoda in the front, and then it showed the Mandalorian. It showed Cara Dune, but I'm helping you out, Jeff.
Cara Bay is right.
Cara Bay is accurate.
Yeah, exactly. And then it showed this guy with like red skin and like spiky things coming out of his head. And he didn't look like a Darth Maul type, but he looked like something else of that variety. And so I was like, oh, okay, I wonder who that character is and what kind of major role he's going to play. No, he dies in the first 5 minutes. Like, I thought that was just such a brilliant little marketing thing of like, here's an interesting character. Nope, he's dead.
Nope. You thought you had a fun Zabrak? Nah.
Mm-hmm.
Womp Rats, guys. They talked about Womp Rats a lot.
They did.
I really liked it.
And one of the things that I love about the world building of this episode is like they had a phrase that the Marshal used that was, sometimes both suns shine on a Womp Rat's tail. Yeah. I was like, what the hell is that?
It's so country, but like Tatooine specific. I was like, that is one of those like country like expressions, like
right. But that's like a Tolkien level kind of world building.
Yeah, for sure.
These guys would come up with their own goofy ass phrases like that.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's interesting. And again, I now want to dig deeper to see if there's more source material than just that Kenobi novel. But that is something they reference all the time. Like they talk about like the 2 suns and like, second sunrise or first sunrise. And, like it's a good day when both suns are shining on you, things like that. So that's kind of been established as part of the lingo of Tatooine, at least in that one other place. Mm-hmm. But it just sounded great.
Yep.
And I have to say, I think we talked about this a bit, but I want to just kind of circle back to it again, because again, it's such the breaking of the trope. I'm really glad. I kept waiting for the moment when like the Marshal just betrays our hero, or something goes wrong, or they prove that they're all just out to like lure the Tuskens into a trap. And the fact that it was just like, no, we're going to work together, and we're actually going to work together through the end of the show, like through the end of the episode. That was really kind of surprising. Friends. Yeah.
I mean, it got to the point to where Mando was like, take care of the child. He's like, okay, but what are you going to do? It's like, I don't know, but here we go.
Yeah. Which I think is Mandalorian for hold my beer.
Yeah, right.
Like
that sounds about accurate.
I don't think
he's like he jokes with him like, now you tell him that it wasn't me that broke this. You did that. You tell him you did that.
You did it. Yes,
I don't know if they'll ever meet. It wouldn't actually make sense in universe for them to meet, but R2-D2 and Mando would get along really well, I think.
Probably really well.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Who was that guy at the end?
That was Boba Fett.
Had to be Boba Fett, right?
Yeah, that was the actor that played Django.
Yeah.
And who was
in the
he was cloned.
Yeah. So so he's supposed to be alive?
Yeah.
That's what that was supposed to be? Oh, shit.
Yeah.
And, I mean, his armor looks like partially digested, right? Like,
yeah. I had just seen that actor so many times in a million things, like I didn't even think twice about it. I was like, oh, look, that guy. Good for him. Still getting roles.
Good for him. He's still getting work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I didn't put it together.
Most of last season, it was not only episodic, but it was kind of like Planet of the Week. And, like, we went back to Tatooine, and then we went back to Navarro. But in that, everything was different. Do you think is Tatooine going to be is Tatooine going to become somewhat of a home base for the show this season? Or at least, is there a lot more plot to still be done on Tatooine?
I mean, I'm just going to say yes because we are always in Tatooine.
Yeah.
Yeah. Feels like that's kind of the hub.
I mean, you don't show
Star Wars.
You don't show Boba Fett there, like, if you're not going back, right? Like,
right.
And Boba Fett was probably the one who found Fennec's body.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point. I didn't
Oh.
made that connection, but that would make a lot of sense. And so maybe this is all on Tatooine, or maybe they follow them somewhere, you know?
Right, or maybe, like, in Season 3, they go back to Tatooine, and then Boba Fett has lines, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
Like, we don't know.
What, understood is not enough for you?
I meant in this show, but yes, I guess that's...
He's no good to be dead.
Understood.
Yeah. Yeah, that's going to be interesting. I'm really looking forward to that, especially because I keep saying, you know, I really want more of the Mandalorian lore. I don't know if the show's going to take this direction, but one thing that gets established in a lot of the novels is that Boba Fett is like an outsider to the Mandalorians. Like that what he does of, you know, selling his you know, DNA to the cloners and then kind of sticking around to help teach them is considered really like a violation of the Mandalorian code and the way.
Right.
You mean Jango?
That's what Jango does.
Jango does, yeah, sorry. Yeah, Boba's not that. Boba is obviously his son, but I'd be curious to see, like, is that something that's going to continue to play? Is Mando going to see Boba as, like, a fellow Mandalorian? Is he going to see him as someone who, like, betrayed the code and, like, they've, you know, been taught, like, don't ever be like this guy? Like, I have no idea which way that's going to go. I'm really looking forward to seeing how that plays out.
Yeah, the question that I have is Boba, like, is he allowed to be part of, like, is he allowed to call himself a Mandalorian? Like, obviously not anymore because he took the helmet off, but, like, was he before?
Right.
But that wasn't even a thing then, though, right? Like, the whole helmet thing? Like, when he was a kid, anyway?
Yeah, because back then, I mean, we saw numerous times in both the Clone Wars and in the Rebels TV shows, which are canon, much more so than the books I keep talking about, we saw Mandalorians taking off their helmets. And so, whatever's happening with Mandalorians taking off their helmets in this show, the way, that's something that either exists only for like a particular kind of Mandalorian that wasn't talked about before, or is a
like
new development.
Diaspora.
Yeah, diaspora or something like that.
Yeah. Or like was like maybe developed in response to the Purge. Maybe that's like, this is how we survive now.
Yeah.
Like, it's not our ancient way. But maybe it draws on an ancient way that not everybody...
Right.
I don't know. Maybe it's like the warriors, the Mandalorian warriors, but not... Although we saw a bunch who took their helmets off back in the...
I mean, it would make sense if one of the things is that now, like during the Purge, you know, they were all hunted and destroyed, that there's a kind of like anonymity is our safety, you know, and the idea of like we have to keep our helmets on always. And also there's, you know, I mean, like when you are driven out of a place and persecuted because of a faith or because of a creed, that becomes so much more important to you. It's like we have to keep this alive because they're trying to destroy it. So it would make sense that the whole like Mandalorian way would become much more devout in this time.
Yeah.
Well, not just that, but like Beskar armor, Beskar steel is damn near impenetrable to blaster fire. So like you keep the helmet on so you don't get shot in the head.
Right, maybe a bunch of people got shot in the back of the head, like, and they're like, okay, just keep your helmet on all the time. They can sneak up on you, but you'll be okay. But like,
yeah, they thought they were safe, like eating at home, and they got shot while like eating with their families and stuff like that. Yeah,
right. Yeah. Also very Deadwood, Wild Bill.
Yeah.
Anyway, but
God, I love that show.
We should do a whole Pandavision stuff on Deadwood because that show is so good.
Can we just not do that special, the new one? I didn't like it.
I haven't even seen it yet.
Oh, you didn't see they did like a one or two episode like.
Honestly, the first season alone was so good. The second season is decent, but the first season is just so good. But
I haven't watched any of it.
Oh, it's very good.
Oh, Jeff, you love it.
Yeah.
I usually am a fan of Timothy Olyphant, so I would agree. And oh god, Ian McShane.
Yeah,
he's amazing in it.
Yep.
But we should probably get back to Star
Wars.
Sorry.
Oh yeah, just in terms of like hiding, sort of being covert and like always keeping your helmet on. It's like I guess nobody sees your face, but like all your helmets look the same. Like, it's like I am a Mandalorian. Whereas like I feel like they could mostly hide in plain sight. They're like, no, I could be from the core system. I don't know. I could be from Tatooine. It's like Mandalorian.
Off ever.
Like they wear their identity on their, their armor is their identity. I mean, so like maybe they could then be covert. Like if like we always keep our helmets on, but like they don't really. But then they don't know it's the same person, but they do. So I don't know.
I guess I'm thinking of it more in terms of like the HBO TV show The Watchmen, where the idea is that the cops all wear masks so that no one can figure out who they are and go to their homes.
Oh, yeah, I haven't seen that, but
yeah. Oh, really? You'd like that? I think
it's very good.
So good.
I remember the first time I saw a cop in a balaclava in New York, though, and I was like, this doesn't seem like a good development. I do not think this is good.
Yeah, that was definitely a different direction that you're going.
Yeah, not that I want people going to people's houses and doing whatever. But.
Yeah. But yeah, so any other kind of last thoughts before we start to wrap up? I guess any kind of predictions? What do you think is gonna? I think it's pretty clear that we are now. We have to have a fight between two Mandalorians about who gets to keep the armor. Like we didn't have that with the Marshal. I think we have to have it with Boba Fett. What else do people or disagree with that one?
Ooh, I think he'll get his armor back. I think he's definitely going to get his armor back. Boba Fett, yeah. Oh God.
Does he want his armor back though?
Yeah, like is he just living on Tatooine?
He could go get it from the Jawas.
Yeah,
right. Like why doesn't he have it?
Well, he looks like he's just living his life on Tatooine. He got an apartment. He's probably seeing some girl. He busts tables at the local watering hole. Like he's like, God damn it! Now I got to get involved again.
Yeah.
Just when I thought I was out,
you pull me back in.
I mean, I could easily see something where our hero gives him his armor back. He's like, oh my God, a fellow Mandalorian. Like, here you go. Mm-hmm. And then is betrayed. And so, like, all the things we thought would happen this time, I could see happening with Boba Fett later.
But, along with that whole, oh my God, a fellow Mandalorian, like, what if he doesn't like Boba because of Jango, doing the whole cloning thing? Like, what if he sees Boba as an abomination and a Boba nation, if you will? Sorry. What if he sees him as an abomination? Is like, no, you don't deserve this armor, and then they have to have a fight over it.
Yeah,
like it could go any direction.
Yeah,
yeah.
It's gonna be interesting. Do you think we're gonna find? We know that Ahsoka shows up. What do you think is gonna be? What do you think is gonna happen with the child by the end of this season?
I just hope he gets. Oh, go ahead. Yeah, more powerful.
Go ahead.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the child is going to have a Beskar crib.
Yeah.
And it's going to be amazing.
Mm-hmm. I do think we're going to get some kind of more... I would guess that by the end of this season, we know a significant amount more about the child's origins. In terms of, is it just a child of, two members of Yoda's species? Is this a cloning thing? Like, is it a clone of Yoda or of someone else of the species? I think we're going to be nowhere near to finding those people, but we're going to have some other big piece of the mystery revealed. That'd be my guess.
I think they might have laid a little bit of a breadcrumb trail for us with the lady in the spaceport when she was like, if that thing ever buds or or replicates or
yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I mean.
Because that's not something that we've necessarily seen in or even had discussed in the Star Wars universe. Is like how do alien races procreate? How do they replicate? How did Baby Yoda come to be?
I'm picturing it like Gremlins in my head. Did somebody pour like water on them?
Yeah,
just a bunch of little ones.
Jeff, what you're saying is that we've now gotten Chekhov's Yoda's reproductive system. Like,
yes.
It's been announced in Act 1, so it has to go off by Act 6 or 7.
Yeah, basically.
I can see that.
I thought it was, I guess the last thing that I really want to say about this episode in particular, I thought it was really funny how ill-fitting the armor was on Timothy Olyphant. It's like, It's like they went to the Walmart locally and were like, let's get a Boba Fett child's costume and stick this on Timothy Olyphant.
He just walked out a Halloween adventure.
Yeah, he was like, let's
pew,
do
pew.
Halloween.
And it was so fitting, I think, because it really reminds you that this armor is perfectly crafted to the person. You know, there's no such thing as off-the-rack Beskar armor.
Right.
So of course it
second hand.
Yeah, of course it doesn't fit him well.
Yeah, his stomach was like super exposed, and like he had so much of his sides exposed. It's like, this doesn't protect him. The same way that it protects Mando.
No, it doesn't.
I knew it was
like,
Timothy
Olyphant.
Olyphant.
Arms. What are you guys doing?
Because of because of that, it's so open. But I knew it was Timothy Olyphant because of his torso. I swear. Before he even talked, I'm like, I know that bod.
The thirst identification system is still strong.
Yeah. Well, then, like, he pulls his helmet off, and Ash was, like, immediately like, his hair is fabulous.
He always has the most fabulous hair. He's going salt and pepper now. I love it.
Have you seen him in Hitman?
No.
He was bald.
I won't like that.
Yeah. Do you think he's going to come back in some way? Or are we probably leaving that part of Tatooine behind?
I hope they cross paths again.
Me too.
Seems very likely to me.
Like, as much as I liked the, a new planet each time, I think it would be nice if we maybe develop, like, a little bit more of an ensemble of characters who we kind of hang out with for a little bit of a season and see grow in some interesting ways.
Yeah. Oh, shit, he's our Queel. He's our Queel this season.
Oh, I hope so.
Oh, that could really work. Yeah, I could like that. So Boba Fett's going to kill him.
No.
That has to happen.
Yeah, in, like, the second to last episode.
I wouldn't assume that, like, the Mandalorian and Boba Fett are necessarily going to be at odds.
Yeah, I'm more on team they're going to get along and work together. I'm with you, Paul.
It's definitely possible, but I feel like it could go either way, and,
Here's what I'm looking forward to. Boba Fett is going to meet Cara Dune and be, like, smitten immediately. And be hitting on her the whole time.
I mean, we know that he has a habit of, like, he had a real fondness for Twilight dancing girls.
Who doesn't?
I mean, I'm just saying, like, Boba was a bit of a flirt in Jabba's palace. We established that, so.
Yep. Speaking of Twi'leks, I thought it was pretty cool in this episode that we got to see, like, a different kind rather than, like, the lithe, like, roguish, sneaky, stabby kind of Twi'lek. We got the bouncer Twi'lek.
Oh, yeah.
The guy who was just like, hey, man, who you here for? Like,
right.
Stops him at the door. He's like, all right, enjoy the fight. And then, like, shows up and is, like, a brawler and super strong. I love it.
We got that a little bit in season 1 because the woman who was part of the team to break into the prison ship was not a dancer, but was of the, like, ooh, I'm, sneaky assassin type. But then her brother was definitely just, like, a big bruiser type. But you're right, it's nice to see that again.
He wasn't big, though. He wasn't that big. He was bigger than her, but he was still kind of, like, sneaky stabby kind of guy.
That makes sense.
Like, I wouldn't put him at barbarian level by any means. But, like, I would say he's a fighter.
Okay.
He might be a dex fighter.
Okay, got it. But not just like a strength as the main stat.
Right. He didn't stat dump into strength.
Nice. Anyone else? Any other last thoughts before we close out?
No. I think we covered a lot.
Cool.
Looking forward to being able to say this is the Bay.
Yeah, I hear that. I hear that. Cara Dune has to come back, right? I mean, we know that.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, she was in the marketing.
Yeah. Well, as we've discussed, the marketing can't lie. Though I think if Cara Dune comes back for 10 seconds and then she's killed, I think Jeff will stop watching the show.
I'm going to revolt if that's the case.
Hard pass on that.
Well, folks, we can't binge it this time, so we have an entire week before the next episode comes out. You've heard what the four of us have to say. What do you all think? Would love to get some discussion going on Facebook or on Twitter. You can find us, our Facebook and our Twitter, by searching for Star Wars Universe Podcast. Some scalawags have also started the Star Wars Universe Podcast. The fact that they started it before us, I think, but does not make it any less rude. I just for some reason didn't find. I searched pretty diligently when I started this podcast for anything else with the same name, and I couldn't find it. And then now it comes up. But either way, the best way to find us though is just go to strandedpanda.com, and there you can just click on Star Wars Universe Podcast and find all the other find everything about how to contact us. Join in the conversation. We'd love to hear you. We'd love to hear about all the things you're doing. We're not going to go the full roundup, but I know, Jeff, you're on a number of the other MCU podcasts, which are doing a couple of big things coming up, especially something tomorrow. So do you want to quick talk about what's going on Saturday?
Yeah, Saturday on Halloween, basically, 2020. We are at noon Central Time, Central U.S. time, I guess. Mm-hmm. We are having a live recording of our 500th episode of the Marvel Cinematic Universe podcast.
Ooh, congrats. That's one hell of an achievement.
It is so much. Oh my God. We've been doing this for like 6.5 years at this point. But yeah, we were live recording our 500th episode. We're going to have a bit of a Halloween party. We've got Halloween themed trivia that has been crafted. I've procured a list of words for a Halloween spooky, whatever we want to call it, themed code names game.
Nice.
Cool.
It's going to be a great time. So if anybody wants to join us for that, come to twitch.tv/strandedpandatv, and it's going to be a great time.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
Come drink with us.
Yeah, that's going to be a lot of fun. Definitely check that out. Both Ashley and Paul have been frequent guests on this and will be on again, but I would just say Ashley does a lot of great stuff on the Stranded Panda Network, on PandaVision. She just dropped a whole episode about spookiness and Sam Raimi. Definitely check that out. And then Paul, I know a lot of his stuff can be found under Zen Madman. So check all that out. Thank you guys all so much for being fans. Really excited for the next season. Have a great day.
We have spoken.
Booty.